Now let us open. We give deep thanks for this moment in our lives where we have come together to fulfill a promise that each one of us made to ourselves so long ago that many of us don't even remember. And that was a promise that we would try to help. Many of us have been in the process of healing and self-healing over a long, long time. And that in and of itself, of course, has value because each one of us is a microcosm of the macrocosm. And as we heal, so does the universe. It's also been a blessing because the more well we are, the more love and well-being we have to offer others. And so in that way also, automatically our healing is of great benefit to everyone. But for us that has not ever been enough, because in each one of us is a thirst to help others, to help our planet. For some people that desire to help comes out around children, animals, even plant life. But additionally, for many of us, that desire to help has been clearly focused on trying to shift consciousness on the planet. Sometimes through political means. How can we see so much cruelty and oppression? Sometimes through emotional healing, trying to help people who are distressed, mentally ill, addicted, and sometimes through simply trying to shift the way we are with one another. Many of us have had this desire since, as I say, before we can remember, because we all, as children, could feel the world's pain. Sometimes we saw it in our families. Most of us, in fact, saw it in our families. Sometimes we saw it in addition in our societies. Whether we came from very poor communities where we were poor as well, or where we had some advantage, or where we were in a world where we had so much and others had so little, we could feel that suffering. We've also felt the suffering not just on that physical plane, but we have felt the suffering on the emotional and spiritual plane of so many in our world. We are privileged to come together now because we have tools, we have teachings, we have techniques, we have ways of helping. This does not mean, of course, that many of us haven't spent our lives already trying to help. It simply means that there has been an acceleration in our capacity to help. And we look forward excitedly to an era where we can see more and more the efficacy of what we do, where we can make a difference. Consciousness Boot Camp is dedicated to this. It's dedicated to our healing. And it's dedicated to helping us to become more efficacious healers and change agents on our planet. For those of you who are watching this video who have not signed up for Consciousness Boot Camp, but who are just checking us out, you are most welcome. In this module of Consciousness Boot Camp, we are going to be discussing ego, instinct, and evolution. There will be two segments. One will be more around teaching around the ego, and the next segment will be dedicated to doing some healing around the ego. If you are signed up for Consciousness Boot Camp, don't think of this as just a free introductory throwaway that we're using in order to get people to sign up. This is the foundation of our program, and we are putting it out on the internet free of charge, not only so that some people might find that they are called to do Consciousness Boot Camp, but even more importantly, because we believe that the teaching and healing that will be contained in this module on the ego is essential for any change to take place on the planet. So we invite you to take this just as seriously as any segment that you pay for, because it's essential not only for ourselves, but for all of us to make greater strides in learning how to deal with our egos. With that in mind, I reach my arms out to you and feel you reaching out to me. And so it begins. As many of you already know, the Living with Reality book is the foundation on a cognitive level of Consciousness Boot Camp, which is also our first year of training for those people who want to go on and become healers and psychointuitive practitioners. And the first part of the book, the introduction to the book, is called Ego, Instinct, and Evolution. Are we ready to change? And that is, of course, the crucial question. Because, as we all know, we have wanted to change, and wanted to change, and wanted to change. And we have made some progress, but we have been thwarted, it feels like, by something within ourselves. Having been an intuitive counselor for many years, I was and have been acutely aware of the anguish that people feel about ourselves, about how difficult it is for us to follow through on our commitments. It's like the legendary New Year's resolution. This year I won't, whatever, eat sugar, get angry, yell at my children, overwork, spend money needlessly, whatever it is that we have resolved to do or not do. And that how many of us at the end of the year find that we have fallen down on the job. And how much self-hatred is there around that? Now, we have been blessed in the 20th century, which we are not in right now, but in the 20th century we were blessed with many helpful programs, for example, 12-step programs around addictions, that helped us to overcome what appeared to be hopeless addiction. And it's marvelous to see people who would, a century before, be lost forever, see them recover, and not only recover, but become a blessing to others. So we have seen incredible progress there. There has been a vast interest in psychotherapy and other self-help processes for people to move into different understandings of themselves and greater self-awareness. And for people who were born a century before, how many people had access or the resources to pay for someone to sit and listen to them, you know, for 20 years talking about their mothers. These have been helpful. There is more self-awareness. And you have the extraordinary people such as William Shakespeare or Jane Austen that you read their work and you think they got it a long time ago without having gone to graduate school in psychology. You know, they understand so much about human dynamics. But for so many of us, our inner world has been a vast mystery. We also saw in the 20th century waves of interest in new thought, new types of spirituality for those people who did not find that their needs were being met in the traditional religions. And there were places to go where people could come together to feel those divine energies and feel some benefits. And yet we're still obese in this nation, in the United States. We are still overeating sugar. That we're eating sugar at all is a problem. We are still overspending, overstressed, self-medicated. Need I go on? Do I have to make the case? So with all these efforts, we are still, it feels like, at the starting line. Why? Why? Why is it so difficult for us to change? That was the question that I asked myself when I started to write this introduction to living with reality called Ego, Instinct, and Evolution. Are we ready to change? And what came to me was that it is the ego. Now, let me explain something. There are many philosophical and spiritual perspectives on the ego. What I'm going to be presenting to you, as far as I know, is different from most of those. Now, I don't know every philosophical perspective or spiritual perspective, so I can't tell you that this is unique, and I certainly can't tell you that it's right. But I do believe, from what I've seen, that it has a different slant, and it's a slant worth considering, because overcoming the ego for most of us is well nigh impossible. We find ourselves over and over and over caught in I thinking, I behavior, and self-destructive behavior as well. So in the teaching that I'm going to be doing in this first segment of our module, which is going to be devoted to the teaching about the ego, I'm going to be presenting a perspective on the ego which is very hopeful, but very straight, where we are not expected to not have the ego anymore, but where we are with our egos to transform them into what I call the ego twice born. One of the requirements of Consciousness Boot Camp, for those of you who are actually taking this program, is that you do the readings in the book that month that relate to what we're working on that month. And this would be the introduction, Ego, Instinct, and Evolution. And if you haven't read it lately, please do, because I go into a lot of detail in the book that I'm not going to be repeating here. What I'd like to do here is to bring together some other thoughts as well as doing a review, and also to help you to absorb the material, because we are in a supportive collective environment. I'm going to be explaining why the ego is so resistant to change, even when it is positive and desirable for us and for all of us. But then you can imagine that if that is the case, that our egos are going to be resisting hearing what I'm saying. Have you ever been in a classroom or read a book where you assiduously studied, and you had no idea what you just read or what you just heard? Isn't it amazing? Yeah. Now, sometimes we don't hear what's being said because something in us knows that it's so ridiculously phony and false that we just turn off. But sometimes we turn off because it's so true, and something in us is resisting hearing it. As a counselor, how many times have I explained something to someone and then they look at me like they really get it, and 2 minutes later it is perfectly evident that they did not comprehend one word that I said? Is there something wrong with them? Are they somehow learning disabled or retarded? No, this is such a common experience that we have to recognize this as part of our human reaction to threatening information. And who is it threatening? What is it threatening? You offer someone a chance to be well and to have better relationships and get love and be more relaxed, and they can't hear it. Who is being threatened? The ego. And why is that a threat to the ego? I will explain that in just a few minutes. But before we do, in order to bring us into a place where we can truly hear what I'm teaching, and this is going to be throughout Consciousness Boot Camp, we're going to be asking James to lead us in a guided process where we become more relaxed and can actually allow the information to penetrate us. Many of you have already heard me speaking about the ego. Many of you have read the book 5 times, and it still hasn't completely sunk in. And what we're attempting to do now is come together with the collective intention that we will hear and we will receive. And James is going to be, throughout our program, over the months, be consistently working with us to help us and our egos to relax so that we can learn.
Very good. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, James.
Okay, everybody, please make yourself comfortable where you are. That's conducive for you going into a more deeply relaxing experience. And to begin with, I'd like you to be aware of any tensions or stresses in your body. And I'd like you to please clench your hands into fists, extend your arms straight out and tense up the muscles. Close your eyes, make a face, squeeze your eyes tight shut. Tense up your abdomen, tense up every muscle in your body. Feel the tension, hold the tension, intensify it. Now drop the arms and relax. Feeling so much more relaxed now than before. And now be aware of your breathing. Allow your breathing to be long, slow, and deep. Allow yourself to relax ever more deeply with each and every breath. And with each exhalation, imagine that you're sending a stream of relaxing energy, like a mountain stream, washing down through your body, from the head down through the body, washing away all tensions, relaxing away all cares. Each and every exhalation, a relaxing stream of energy flowing through your body and out your feet. And as this is going on, I also invite you to open to the energies of Source, the highest of which you can conceive. And imagine that the source of the stream are beneficial energies coming from the divine down into the crown chakra, the top of the head, and spreading from the crown down through the head, neck, shoulders, arms, and hands. And then down from the shoulders through the torso, legs, and feet. What may be referred to as the chi energies, the life force. Allow these beneficial energies to flow into you from above and through you. Allowing yourself to feel more and more wholeness. And on one of those exhalations, perhaps you might make an inaudible ah within yourself the awe of satisfaction. So just go ahead and do that now, silently within yourself. Feeling whole, feeling complete. Open to receiving, learning, and growing during the time that unfolds as we are here together, experiencing these processes together in a spirit of mutual support for one another, and knowing that we are indeed feeling a support from within for that which is for our highest good and the highest good of the whole. Thank you.
Now I would like our healing arts group to do a chant which will further help us to go into a place of relaxation and receptivity. Many people have been talking about the ego over long periods of time, but it's become even more acutely in our consciousness over the past few years as it has entered into popular language to be focused on the ego. And we've all gotten the sense that the ego is a pretty squirrely guy who makes a lot of trouble and mischief. And there's no doubt about it. That is true. We look at the ego more like a naughty 2-year-old. We don't want to make the ego into the demon of the planet. Because if we think of it as the naughty 2-year-old, then we might actually believe that there's something we can do to help the ego to evolve. If we think of it as this dastardly demon, then all we're doing is giving it more power by making it look so powerful and making it look like it's beyond our capacity to change and to help. It is true that it has to be a dramatic shift in our relationship with the ego, that the ego has been running us rather than us running the ego. It's like living in a household where the children are running the show. Have you ever been in a household like that? When you're the parent, you may think it's really marvelous. But if you're a visiting person, you think, oh my God, when can I get out of here? These children are impossible. Well, to take a more relaxed attitude, because we are going to be focusing on being more relaxed, I'd like us to now see the ego as a 2-year-old saying, "Nya! Nya! I don't want." And we can get pretty angry at children, can't we? I mean, they can be a bundle. There was a time when child rearing said that children should be seen and not heard. And many of us have been trying to do that with the egos, too. Let's just shut this thing up. But what do we discover when we try to raise children in that authoritarian way? Is they grew up to be very deformed on an emotional level. They were angry, they were oppressed, they were repressed, or they were violent when they got into freedom. It didn't really help them to grow, did it? We had to take on raising children. If we're going to have children, we're going to have to raise them. Well, guys, if we're going to have egos, which we do, we're going to have to raise them. So let's take a moment to see our egos as 2-year-old versions of ourselves. And gaze at them. Our first reaction is they're annoying. Now let's try to get compassion. They're only 2. Let's try to remember that they're only 2. So let yourself feel bigger than your ego at this moment. Like you're the adult and that ego is that 2-year-old. The minute we do that, we begin to gain the edge, the upper hand. If we rage against our egos, if we're ashamed of our egos, if we're afraid of our egos, then we are making them larger than we are. And then what chance do we have? We know very well how children respond when they feel that in us, when they feel our fear. They are all over us. So give yourself that in this moment and say, let's all say out loud, I am greater than my ego.
I am greater than my ego.
Now there is an ego beyond our individual ego, which is the collective ego. Now you look at that and you really feel like you're under. It's like, oh my God, there's this giant rain cloud and I'm this little person and it's a tornado and it's a hurricane, it's a lynch mob, it's, frightening. Whatever group of people you think are bad, whether you think it's the Democrats who are bad, or you think the Tea Party is bad, or the Nazis were bad, or the Socialists are bad, or the Chinese are frightening because there's so many of them. Whatever it is that you have as the collective that you think is really scary, just think about that for a moment and think of yourself. Just realize, oh, no, that's nothing compared to the collective ego. Okay, that is how we feel around the collective ego. In fact, when we see these, we are seeing collective ego at work. And I'll explain that in a moment, because it's all based on separation. But now let's feel ourselves as a collective. Take whatever image, and I'm not saying anything negative about any of those groups, but I'm saying whatever group or image comes to mind that works for you as being scary as a collective. Now see that entire collective as a bunch of 2-year-olds. That is a frightening thought, isn't it? But that's will help. Okay, and now see the self, the same beings that we see their egos banding together in separation in ways that either are frightening to us or really are frightening. Now think of all those beings as having spirits or souls. Higher selves. And now let's connect to the higher selves of all those groups of people that we think are so scary. And feel ourselves as a collective. And look at those collective 2-year-olds right now. And what happens?
We feel stronger.
We do. We are greater than our egos. Let's all say that. We are greater than our egos. Our collective higher selves are greater than our collective ego.
Our collective higher selves are greater than our egos.
And remember that for every them in this collective that we think is scary, we are them. To them. That we are scary to them. We are ruining the country. We are ruining the world. We are ruining the family. We're raining on our parade. Whatever it is. We are the them to someone else. But when we connect on the level of our higher selves, there is no them. Now, where does the ego come from? Why is it here? What can we do to help it grow up? And why is that so important? Let me start with where the ego comes from. And many of you have heard me express this metaphor before. I call it the myth of creation. But today, you're not going to hear it with your ears. We're all going to take it in and feel ourselves as though we were there. So even if you have heard this before, take it in as though it were for the first time. That in the beginning, there was only oneness. For many of us, a way of seeing this would be to see what it was like to be in the womb. What was the difference between the egg and the mother? Nothing. The egg was part of the mother. That fertilized egg was within the mother. The fetus was in the mother, and the mother felt that connection, and so did that fetus. That we were one. Yet even within that oneness of the mother and the fetus is already the potential for differentiation between the mother and the child. So that potential already existed even though during that gestation period they were one. Whatever happened to the mother happened to that child. You could not kill the mother without killing the child until the day of birth. So taking this as a loose analogy to give us a sense of what is in fact possible, that there was a time when everything was one, as that egg was part of the mother. That fertilized egg. And I like to call it the amorphous blob, so that we don't take any of this too seriously. We should never take anything too seriously, because after all, we're only humans. We're making all of this stuff up anyway in order to make some sense of our experience. So we were part of the amorphous blob, but within us was already the potential of not just one child, but of all creation as we know it. And so just as there is an inner program to childbirth that for some reason, no matter who you are, no matter what part of the world you live in, whatever race or religion, the gestation of the baby seems to take the same amount of time because it's programmed. And so it was that for some reason, which I don't even want to try to explain, it was meant to be that the amorphous blob exploded in the spiritual Big Bang, and we became fragmented into aspects of consciousness, different forms of existence. So I'd like you to see this amorphous blob. You can think of it as a big cloud that suddenly bursts open, and there are stars that are flung out in every direction. And each one is differentiated existence. Can you do that with me? It's less important that you take notes than that you be present, because when you read Ego, Instinct, and Evolution, there's a lot of written material already. Just be with it and watch that fragmentation of consciousness. Now, when I talk about the fragmentation of consciousness into differentiated existence, I'm talking about everything that exists. From the paperclip, the metal that's in it, the earth, the stars, the sky, the heavens, water, humans, every aspect of consciousness, even thoughts and ideas, anything that exists was in potential at the time of that Big Bang. If something doesn't have the potential to come into existence, then it never will. If you're a rock, you will never have the potential to become a dog. It's obvious, isn't it? Now, people may take minerals out of the rock and say, okay, well, I can use these minerals to help develop something. But you can't turn a rock into a dog. It doesn't have the potential. But in the amorphous blob, the potential for all existence had to exist. And so it has been. And when all of this differentiated existence came into being, I like to call it God coming into existence. The heavens and the earth, the sky and the water, each one existed in contrast to the other, because we cannot comprehend anything existing if it is not in contrast to something else, which is, we're back to the amorphous blob, right? If there is no contrast within the amorphous blob, it is an amorphous blob. What makes things have existence is that they are not something else. An example that I give in the book is that if every single thing in the room, look around your room, wherever you are, or if you're outside, look around that space, and see every single thing turning into the exact same color. Let's say everything became the same color blue. Could you see anything other than blue? In fact, you probably couldn't see anything because you'd just be blue, wouldn't have an eye. But the point is that everything, if it's all the same, you can't see it because it's all blended together as blue. And so in order to have existence, things have to be different from one another. And when we became differentiated and we became these fragments, we came to feel ourselves as real because we were different. The ego's awareness of individual existence is what gives us a sense that we exist at all. The ego is simply the awareness of individual existence. It is, I am not blue. I am not Roz. I am not a porcupine. Now think about that for a moment. Really take that in. The only way that we can be aware of our individual existence is by not being something else. Is everyone really taking this in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the ego, whose job it is to be aware of individual existence, is born from the awareness of separation. And when the child is born, it becomes increasingly aware that it is no longer the mother. It is now separate, and it has to fight for survival. Because as I talk about in the preface to Living with Reality, I think it's in there, life is a struggle. Nobody gets away with anything. You have to fight for your survival. That baby has to cry. That baby has to breathe. That baby needs to make people aware that it's hungry. And that baby is helpless. Try to feel yourself as that infant coming out of the oneness, suddenly aware of your individual existence, suddenly full of needs that are not automatically taken care of, suddenly struggling for survival, and completely helpless. That's, on the personal level, the genesis of the ego. I've given you on the collective spiritual plane, the genesis of the ego is the very existence of anything as differentiated from anything. That's how the ego came into being. And I say the heavens have ego and the earth have ego. Anything that exists that is separate from anything else has ego. God has ego. Ego has ego because it isn't something else, and it has awareness of its own individual existence. The masters of the universe, those who believe in masters, that Jesus, our Buddha, everybody, no matter how highly evolved, has an awareness of individual existence, or they would not pee when they needed to. There's nothing wrong with that. It's an absolute, direct result of the Big Bang, of the evolution. Now some people might ask, why did the amorphous blob differentiate into fragmented existence to start with? And I have many entertaining theories about that. You know, one of which is that God was bored and wanted to experience himself as real. But in fact, I actually believe that God came out of the amorphous blob, so where's the God coming from? But I say it's programmed. I have no idea. I'm making this up anyway. But it really explains things, doesn't it? That all of a sudden, there we are, we have individual existence, and we have to survive. And our egos are born in that moment of, oh my God, I have to fight for my survival. If I have to drink that milk, I exist, that milk exists, I must have that milk. It's so obvious, isn't it? How can we get rid of that? How can you ever get rid of the awareness of individual existence unless you no longer exist. It's hopeless. The good news is we don't ever have to get rid of it. We just need to move from that infantile consciousness. The ego was born when we were born. We were infants. We were helpless. We did not have highly developed consciousness, no matter how brilliant we think we were. And we can grow up. The ego needs to grow up and go beyond and transcend the consciousness of infancy. But it never goes to school. Instead, the ego gets managed. Now, before I talk about how the ego gets managed, I'm going to speak briefly about how the ego starts developing. Because are we all in a deep understanding of where our egos come from? Now, the ego in the helpless being says, wah! That's about it. It knows how to cry. But then it starts to get programmed. Now remember that the ego is not the only thing that exists about us. We also have our DNA, which we got from our inheritance. So here we have a set of factors over which we have no control. For example, we may be born with very high intelligence. We may be born with very strong bodies. We may be born with musical aptitude. These are things that we are born with, that come with our DNA. Now our egos, who are busily trying to survive, have to work with who we are, what we bring in on a genetic level. And then our egos find themselves plopped down in a family or in an orphanage, in some environment where we have to operate. It doesn't help an infant to say the word dada if it's in China. So the word that it is going to use is the one that's going to fit the Chinese language. It's learning from the environment how to interact with that environment in a way to get its needs met. As obvious an example as that is, think about that for a moment, that our egos were born in an environment where we had to communicate with the people around us who had our lives in their hands. And so the ego developed strategy. The Chinese baby says whatever the Chinese baby says, because I don't know what the word for milk is, or dada is. Now on a much deeper level, that ego has to learn how to manipulate the environment. People have commented on how puppies have these big eyes. So do babies. They're supposed to look cute. They're supposed to appeal to us, because otherwise we'd say, how did I produce that turd? I think I'll go play golf. You know, it's like something has to pull on your heartstrings. Oh, my baby, isn't it cute? Oh, is this not the cutest baby you've ever seen? Oh, my goodness. Oh, it just burped. Isn't that adorable? You know, when you see human beings with babies, you really have to wonder, you know. But those babies are playing up their cuteness and their helplessness and their adorableness. They're doing anything they can to get us to take care of them, because they have to figure out how to maneuver in the world. Now, this is not simple. Mommy's tired. Dad is sex deprived. Mom is sex deprived too, but she's too tired to care that she's sex deprived. Yeah. People have to call in reinforcements, friends, neighbors, grandparents to take care of this creature. How is this being going to get all these people to overlook their own needs? I have a lot of trouble getting people to overlook their needs and take care of me, don't you? But if babies didn't have that talent, we would not be sitting here, because the human race would have died off a long time ago. The babies are figuring it out. And believe me, having done a lot of psychological work for a long period of time and doing intuitively, working with it intuitively, I know that even while you're in the womb, you're picking up signals about what is what in this family. Who am I supposed to get? Who's going to take care of me? Mom, dad, auntie, grandma, the nun at the orphanage. Who is going to take care of me? What strategies do I have to use in order for this to happen? And I'm already figuring out the odds. But I also have to work with my own nature, which I was born with. So if I'm born with a more aggressive nature, I am going to find a pattern of behavior that somehow integrates my aggressive nature with the needs of the people around me. What is going to make them want? When I say their needs, they have to want to take care of me. So, for example, if I have a guilt-ridden mother, guilt is the way to go. And what do I need to do to make mom feel guilty? That becomes my survival strategy. Or I think if dad is the real power in the family, and I think my mom is kind of like, too crazy, too weak, too tired or something, dad may be the, a chip off the old, he looks just like me, or she looks just like my mother, or whatever it is. Then that child is going to try to figure out how to make daddy proud. This is obvious when you actually observe the behavior of children. They figure out survival strategies very quickly, how to appeal to the people around them to take care of them. Is there anything wrong with this?
No.
Yes and no. No, there's nothing abnormal about it. Is there something wrong with it? Well, of course, not in a moralistic sense. But what is the problem with it? The problem is that we're already beginning to become a personality that is locked up in a set of behaviors and attitudes from which we will be trying to free ourselves for the rest of our lives. That's what's wrong with it. Now, that infantile ego never is capable of thinking beyond itself. Very understandable, because as we know, the ego is the awareness of individual existence. So the baby's going to cry, wants mommy to get up at 2 in the morning, at 4 in the morning, at 6, however, if it's that kind of a hungry baby. And mommy may be at the brink of collapse. Now, would it be better in the abstract, for that infant to be hungry just a little bit longer so mom could get a little sleep so she could actually get up and feed it? If we had that higher perspective, the baby could say, mom was just up. She looked awfully tired the last time she came around. I think I can manage another hour. Let her get some rest, and then she'll be happy to see me. But no, it's wah! Gimme now! So that infantile ego is not capable of having the consciousness to realize that its own good would be served by not asking for what it needed in the short run, because it's only thinking of itself, yet it lives in a collective. That's the metaphor for our entire problem as a planet. We don't think in terms of the collective, what is the collective need in order for me to survive? Later, that infant, as it begins to develop, figures out survival strategies that are more clever, but they're not based on consciousness, they're based on survival. So for example, if mommy wanted to abort me because she didn't want to have another child, and I'm in the womb, and I get it, mom doesn't want me, I think I better be good baby. We're not thinking I should be good baby because mom needs a break. We're thinking I should be good baby, otherwise mom is going to kill me. We're in fear. We're always in fear that our needs are not going to get met, and we're desperately seeking and testing out survival strategies. But that's not consciousness. They're based still on manipulation of the universe. Consciousness takes education. It takes talking to your child about mom has needs too, because does an infant think that mom has needs? Does the teenager think that mom has needs, or dad? I'm only using mom as, in these examples, but this could be dad or grandma or anybody. Caretaker. It's not thinking about mom's needs, it's thinking about how to manipulate mom's ego so that mom will take care of us. Because mom is, let's say, shame-based, feels lousy about herself, so all I have to do is look like bad mommy, and she'll kill herself to take care of me. So my ego is busily, and that, by the way, has to do with mom's ego and her survival strategies that she's gotten into. I'm not going to get into that right now. But in the book, I think I speak about that a bit more. About we are really playing to the egos of the other people. Well, that was very obvious, and my son is the chip off the old block, or boy, was this reflect about me, or I'm going to dress this baby up with these curls and bows and this cute, and everybody's going to look at it and say, wow, isn't this an adorable baby? And I'm going to walk around and I'm going to have to take care of that thing because that's how my ego is going to get gratified. But the important thing is that there's a distinction between manipulating the universe in order to get my needs met, which is my smarts, versus my higher consciousness, which says everyone around me is real, and so is the collective of which I am a part. And the truth is that I'm really only a part of this family, and what can I do to support that so that it will support me, which we will understand in much greater depth when we get to the modules on Platform 1, Becoming Oneness, and Platform 4, which is Becoming Mutually Supportive. But back at the Ego Ranch, we have this monster growing, which is always on the lookout for its advantage. And in order to gain advantage, it must prove that it is different. Different in some way. Let's say there are 4 brothers and sisters before me. I have to be cuter, smaller, weaker, more helpful, something, because mom's already exhausted. Dad's probably sick of working and having to feed others. I'm another mouth to feed. What am I going to do? I can't just be as good or as dependent or as weak or as charming or as smart as the other 4. I've got to be better. Or if I'm the older sibling and the cuter one comes along who doesn't talk back to mom yet, I've got to be more something, more helpful, more difficult, more something to suck up those resources. Because what am I going to do? It's a finite world. Mom's tired. There's only so much money, so much food, so much affection. I got to fight for me. And I can only do that by being different. I am terminally unique, as they say in the 12-step program. I am unique. In fact, I can be the most unhappy as a way of gaining attention. if that slot hasn't been taken. I can be the most distressed, the most pathetic, the most needy, a source of worry. And then we stake out this territory. Now, let's say we've got it nailed. We are really, we're on. We have figured out how to get our needs met in the family. Our egos are with it. What happens when we go out into the bigger world? We're on play date with Johnny. Johnny's mom doesn't really care about our little routine that we have sorted out for ourselves. Johnny's mom is Johnny's mom. She's all wrapped up in Johnny. Johnny doesn't like it, especially if we have the same routine. Now we're scrambling. We call this socialization. What we're doing is we're developing new and different ego responses, new programs. And you see it when you're a school teacher. You go in and you see the kids who have been one kind of person at home, coming in, trying to sort it out like the dogs figuring out the pecking order. What role is everybody going to get into in order to get their needs met? And some seem to fall by the wayside. They're just not able to pick up a role. Now, if they're lucky, they'll get a Miss Brennan for a teacher who'll be worrying about them. And then they can be the most behind children that Miss Brennan will give the most focus to. It's an ego eat ego world, isn't it? And the larger the community we move into, the more we multiply and develop, refine, and complexify our ego-based personalities. And this is the irony. When we are with others, and they say, you know, you have this tendency to try to dominate everyone, or you have, which has been your ego-based pattern, or you have a tendency to be manipulative, or you have a tendency to talk too much. And you say, but that's the way I am. I can't do anything about that. That's the way I am. I'm anxious. I'm fearful. I'm this. I'm that. And by this time we have become so identified with the program that we've been running that we can't even tell that there is a difference. And we begin to use these ego-based personalities as justification to be that way. Let's say we have more traumas, each of which then impact us, and we are continually adjusting ourselves to these traumas based on our ego-based personalities. We don't typically question our reaction to these traumas because that's the way we are. Then we expect the entire world to revolve around our reaction to this trauma because that's the way we are. Is that the only way we could be? I'd like each one of us to think about, and remember in the next segment we're going to do some healing around all of this. But in the meantime, I want you to really get it. I want you to really see that this is an artificial construction based on the ego's need to find something about us that will get somebody to take care of us. And that this artificial structure is who we think we are. And I'd like each one of us in this moment to rise above that and look down on yourself. Just picture yourself in your daily life with your little ego personality and look at it as though you were watching a movie. Lovely, isn't it? And what is the word that links all of these together? Me. Me, 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 me. I need, I want, I feel. You hurt me. You did this to me. You want this from me. This happened to me. Perfectly understandable. Ego is always based in the I because that's how it was born. Yet, now let's take our vision and move it out and see ourselves as a part of a collective. For instance, look at a child first running around, running in front of the camera saying, "Look at me! Look at me!" Now look at that child in the context of the family. See the family unit. See what mom's doing, see what dad's doing, if there's a mom and a dad, or the two moms, or the one mom, or the two dads, or whatever you've got going in your family, or the orphanage. See this unit of beings. Sometimes it's extended. There are multiple families that are, because there's so many blended and mixed families. And see it all as a unit. And see everybody. Each one is doing their me. And see yourself now as being part of whatever family unit or family type unit you were in as a child. And watch the whole dynamic of all those ego-based personalities pulling on each other in order to meet their needs. Can you see it?
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of harmony, is there? There isn't, in that we, in that collective, there isn't much sense of we, except when it's them against us, which I'm going to talk about in Platform 1, Becoming Oneness. Then suddenly it's we. Oh yeah. Our side of the family versus that side of the family. Us versus the neighbors. The kids against the parents. We start having collective we's. The white people versus the Chinese people, or the black people versus the Native American people. Americans versus the world. Whatever. The smart ones versus the stupid ones. The athletes versus the nerds. We have we's, but every we is based on being different from some other we. And even within that we, take some we that you belong to in your life. And look at that we versus the other we. Our team. Okay, our team versus their team. Now look a little closer and see how every single individual in that team is actually still fighting for itself. I want to be the star hitter. I don't want to shame my parents by being the one who misses that last hit and loses the game. I haven't been picked, even though I'm the worst player on the team. I'm going to get into an ego snit about that. He's getting more attention. She's getting more praise. She's better than I am. She's worse than I am. All this comparison going on constantly. Give yourself one moment to think about how much time and energy you spend thinking about comparing yourself to other people. Just take a slice a slice of this moment. How many unconscious ways have you already compared yourself to me, to him, to her? Compared this program to some other program. Compare this program to what it should have been. The ego is busy. It's always at work. What are we going to do about it? Well, the first thing is to recognize that we are all the same in this respect. Even if I am going to be the most selfless person in the group, I'm more selfless than you are. That makes me more spiritual. I'm ascending faster than you. I am that, you are me. In our busy efforts to distinguish ourselves from each other, we are one. We can all say this together. You are ridiculous, and so am I.
You are
ridiculous, and so am I.
You're ego-based, and so am I.
You're ego-based, and so am I.
Now, before we get to there's going to be a lot more healing in our next segment, but before we get to whatever healing we're going to do here, I'd like to talk a little bit more about what the impact of this ego-based behavior is on our ability to change, because this is why we start this program with ego, instinct, and evolution. The ego is wedded to these patterns of behavior because they are survival-based. How many of us are really capable of transcending the survival instinct? It's tough. I mean, you see that the insect fighting for its life. You see the elderly hanging on for dear life when they don't even want to be here on some level, but their bodies are gasping. I mean, it's really tough to get beyond the survival instinct on a physical level or on an emotional level. And remember that our physical survival as infants is connected to these behaviors. I need milk. I need to be changed. I'm cold. I need to be cuddled. I need. These are survival instincts that we've developed, these patterns of behavior, in order to meet these needs. Every ego-based behavior, if you could follow the thread, you'd see how it all comes down to fear that we will not survive as individual beings. If we could get that, we could have some compassion for ourselves. But that means that when we are being asked to change our perspective and to change our behaviors, we're going up against our survival instinct. I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say your mommy gave you candy as a child to shut you up. Then you have an association of candy, shut up, make mommy happy. When you want to shut yourself up, what do? Reach for the candy. So, you didn't say at the age of 2, I don't want that lollipop, you're shutting me up, I need to express my deep needs. You said, that was all there was to it. And so, when you start having uncomfortable feelings, that might rock the boat, you're going to reach for the candy. Because if you don't reach for the candy, you might say something that would upset mommy, and mommy won't take care of you. Now try to break that pattern when it's rooted in survival. Do you see what I'm saying? I want you to really internalize this, not just get it in your head, really internalize it. We are driven by fear. That our own little individual existence will not continue, and we have developed patterns. In the book, I think I talk about the alcoholic. Maybe, I think this is in Platform 5 about becoming self-aware. That you may have chosen to drink as a way of dealing with emotions, that if you didn't deal with them that way, would have threatened your standing in your family and threatened your survival. And so you're not just being asked to give up the substance to which you have a physiological addiction. You're being asked to give up the substance that you associate with your survival, even though it's killing you. And this is the irony of the whole story. We're so busy trying to survive, we're killing ourselves. Because that candy is killing us. And that personality that we've created, that either the grumpy personality or the placating, whiny personality or that Prince of Platitude personality or the anything you want is okay with me personality or the needy personality or the helpful personality is killing us. Because it's running us, and we are not responding in an appropriate way to the challenges that we're facing, because we go into automatic behavior over which we have no control, apparently, because it is so old, so ingrained, so connected to survival. So the question is, are we ready to change? Which is the name of the chapter, Ego, Instinct, and Evolution. Are we ready to change? Hell no! And then you see it played out in our society. We were continuing to buy and produce gas-guzzling cars despite what we were doing to the planet. Duh! Where does this insane thinking come from? Because every company was looking for its survival, and it had a niche. Just like I had a niche in the family as being the brightest, cutest, most talented, it had the niche as the producer of the most gas-guzzling car that would make the buyer feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger going down the road. That company had figured out what your ego wanted, and it was going to give it to you no matter what. Whether it was killing the environment, killing you, killing us, killing all of us. When our housing crisis happened, it happened because everybody was into short-term thinking about, I'm going to buy, I'm going to sell, I've got to get in on this. I've got to get in. I'm going to borrow way more money than I can afford in order to get in on this, because next year this house is going to be worth $100,000 more. And then when that house of cards fell, everybody said, oh, look what happened to me. Those mean banks, what they did to me. We will only think of me when we got into it. We weren't thinking, it's like the kid who doesn't say, Mom needs to rest, so I think I'll be hungry for a little while longer. And from a conscious place, not from a kiss-ass place. Because, oh yeah, I want Mommy to think I'm good, so I'm going to say, okay, Mommy, it's okay to rest. That's still ego-based behavior, because you're still trying to differentiate from your brother who's a brat to make Mommy take care of you. But in true consciousness, you say, oh, for this unit to survive, Mom needs to get some rest, and my parents need to have a love life. How many of us are the least bit concerned as children that we give our parents enough time for them to have a relationship or a love life.
Not.
Exactly. Well, it's no different when we're looking at our businesses and our economic behavior. It's all the same. People were not sitting there and saying, these prices are ridiculous. This cannot last. I should not do this. I need to go out there and tell people, this is a myth. There were a few. There's always prophets in the wilderness. And you know what we do with our prophets? Kill them before they multiply. So we can see that there is absolutely no difference between those selfish people that we point the finger to. Oh, bad General Motors. Bad. They only thought of themselves and their profit, whereas we never did that. We who were speculating on real estate could point our finger to General Motors that was putting out these gas-guzzling cars that we were buying. Unless we were the good conscious ones as opposed to those bad unconscious ones, and our ego was puffed up by being better, by being more environmentally sensitive, as opposed to those other really stupid people whose egos were puffed up by the size of their cars. And when we are challenged by global warming, we don't even want to know about it. It's like the alcoholic who says, I'm not impacted. I can do this. I can drink. It doesn't affect me. I always ask people who drink, if it doesn't affect you, why are you drinking? I like the taste. Oh, but the better one is, it's good for your heart. It's good for your heart. Of course, what's good for your heart is the grapes, or what's in the grapes. So eat grapes. You know what I mean? Do you need to drink alcohol to have grapes? Anyway, as I was saying, our ability to rationalize our ego-based behavior is astounding. And nobody says the emperor has no clothes. Because if you call someone else on their ego, you got to look at your own, right? So we just go along collectively pretending that these problems don't exist until our survival is so impacted that we think, well, maybe we should cut back by 2025 or 2070 or after I'm dead. I don't really care. We can continue to pollute the environment because I'm going to be dead before the ice caps completely melt and we all go floating off into, who cares, Well, unless you have children, you say, but I'm concerned about my children. My children have to have a better life because my ego is really determined to have children who have a happy life so that I can prove that I was a good parent. Is it tough to change? Very, very tough to change. And now, remember I was talking about the collective ego? Well, what do you do when there's a collective ego out there that's pulling in one direction and you're trying to say no, right? Say no to drugs when everybody else in school. You take kids, teenagers who have very little opportunity to have developed true character and self-discipline and higher consciousness because they're children and because their parents haven't taught them anything different, because the schools are telling them to compete, because our whole society is based on competition, and you say to these kids, you should say no to drugs. Now, I, on the other hand, I'm going to be a workaholic, a shopaholic, and I'm also going to smoke marijuana at night when you're asleep. But you should say no to drugs. It's kind of unrealistic, isn't it? It's very difficult. Well, but we are those children. We are those children who can't say no. But this isn't hopeless, even though it may sound hopeless, because when we get the game, then we can actually change it. If we keep believing that what we believe is true, if we keep believing that we are these ego-based personalities, if we keep identifying with our programs, then there's no hope for real substantial change. Oh, we may tweak it a little bit here and tweak it a little bit there, but it's like having a lousy program that you're making a few tweaks to. Throw it out. We are the operating system. Let's develop some new programs. That's what Consciousness Boot Camp is for. That's what the Living with Reality program is about, the Living with Reality book. That's what all the healing work that we're going to be doing through this boot camp and beyond is about us taking back the power as the operating system, as the brain of our own little piece of the planet, and getting reprogrammed. And we're going to be doing some reprogramming in our next segment, but before we do that, we can get some hope here. The answer cannot be getting rid of the ego as long as we exist as individuals, because it's the awareness of individual existence. Somebody has to tell us that we're hungry, or we will die. That's not the idea. The idea is for us to begin to think from a different locus, from a different location. Think from the perspective of the whole instead of from the perspective of the individual. Begin to rebalance ourselves so that we begin to understand that we are all aspects of the oneness in the process of evolution, but to put it in more simple terms. And that's what we're going to be doing more in this segment. By the time we get to the end, when we get to Platform 9, we will be different and we will be able to think about this differently. But for now, let's at least think about it this way. We are one. We are one organism. We belong to units, a family, a couple, a school, a group. And that we cannot survive and thrive if we compete with one another. It would be like if you're the foot and you say, I want all the resources. You're the foot in the body. Okay, I want all the resources to come to me. Well, what would happen? If that happened, which is what we really, what our egos say, I need everything. I need all the resources to come to me. Me. Well, there'd be no blood in your heart, dude. Your brain would stop functioning. You'd have one big bloated foot. And you'd be dead. Your foot would fall off. I mean, there'd be no you. But we don't get this because our egos are born in infancy and they are based on separation. So even though our instinct, our training, our socialization, and our collective consciousness all tell us that we need to think of number one. Think of number one. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Take care of yourself. No matter, it doesn't make any difference how many voices are calling for send all those resources to the foot. We have to wake up and become aware that we are one, and we need to start thinking about the good of the whole. That means we need resources in our hearts and our brains. Now, I'm going to give you a very simple example of this. When we have goods and services that we are trying to sell overseas, don't we need people to make enough money to buy them? If we want to take all the resources for ourselves, there's nobody to buy our goods and services. If I want all the resources for myself and I want to go to medical school and I want to become a heart surgeon, I've got to have people who can buy my services. I can't have all the resources. Even from a very simple-minded perspective. If I have a great Mercedes, but I live in a place where everybody else is driving a clunker, how far am I going to get on the freeway before there's somebody who's taken a dump in the middle of the road and it can't even drive on the freeway? We are impacted by how poor our neighbors are. That guy who's in a lousy car that he can't steer might have an accident and hit me, or break down, or be putting out fumes that I have to smell. How often do we think about how important it is for other people to have good cars, not just us? And they have to have the money to have those cars serviced so that they don't break down. And they have to have the money to have insurance on those cars. So if we do have an accident, that we're covered. And we have to have enough revenue collectively to fix the roads. Go to the third world and see what I'm talking about. Go to places where there's such a dramatic difference between the top and the bottom and see how the people at the top economically have all these luxuries but don't have good roads. Not to speak of the emotional cost of the difference, of how you feel when you walk out and you see other people suffering. Because we are one. We can't help but feel one another. Remember, the fact that we are discrete entities is an illusion. We are really still one, but we have the appearance of being completely separate. We were once that amorphous blob, but we really are still part of. And I'm going to speak of it as part of, but as I say, at the end of this program, if you live through all of this work, you will come to be able to feel yourself as part of the oneness. But now at least think of yourself as part of something bigger, just like we can see in our families. That if I am always showing up my brother, he is going to resent me, and I'm going to get punched out. Common sense, dude. In a relationship, a so-called love relationship, how many of us compete with our partners? How many of us have used shame to make our partners behave? You hurt me, you made me feel this way, you did this, you did this, you did this, trying to make that other person feel shame. But if we are actually a couple, an entity, a unit, what's going to happen to me if you feel shame? First of all, I'm going to feel it. But secondly, you're going to be smoldering resentment. Am I really going to get love from somebody who's feeling shame? They can't. They've imploded on themselves. They've shut down. If you increase that person's shame, they cannot love you. And then you say, you don't love me. Shame on you. Common sense, guys. This is not working. Thinking from the perspective of the ego doesn't work. Now, a lot of what I talk about in ego, instinct, and evolution is shame. And I'm going to take a moment to talk about shame. When we are shamed, we're being told that there's something wrong with us, as opposed to that there's something wrong with what we did. So, if I've done something to hurt you, I might feel guilty about what I did. But if I'm told that I'm a bad girl or a bad boy for doing it, then I'm being shamed. I am bad. I didn't do a bad thing. I am bad. Bad boy, bad girl. So back to ego, instinct, and evolution, when we're little kids, our parents don't want us to look bad because it'll make them look bad, and their egos are going to be warped by that. They don't like that. So let's say you're a parent and you see your child acting out, being a bully or hitting or stealing or something. You say, that's bad. Don't be a bad boy. That's selfish. Well, of course I'm a bad boy or a bad girl because I am selfish, because I'm ego-based. But I'm being told that being in my ego is selfish. So now I have to hide that I'm in my ego, right? So I have to pretend that I want to share. Or I can see that I'm not a good person. Now how do I feel? Remember that all this is based on survival. If I am bad, what could happen to me? Love could be cut off. Love, supplies, survival. If I cannot continue to make my parents want to take care of me either out of love or guilt, I'm dead. That's the whole problem with shame. It is associated with fear of death. Do you remember the last time you felt shame? Do you remember that feeling that the bottom fell out of you? Do you know that feeling where you just feel like you want to die? Why? Why would we have that feeling? Because we feel like we are going to die. Because we're so scared that we're not going to be cared for anymore because we've been bad. We're going to do anything not to be shamed. Ever again. But we can't help it because somebody is going to shame us somewhere along the line. Shame has everything to do with it. Everything. Our fear of shame blocks us from becoming conscious. Because what I'm talking about is let's look at ourselves honestly, let's look at these behaviors, and let's reprogram ourselves. But supposing when we look at ourselves honestly and we look at our behaviors, what we feel is shame. Forget about it. I'd rather go on killing myself and others and being miserable than have to feel that shame that will make me feel like I'm going to die. And I'm going to add one more piece about shame, which is that as infants and as children, we are highly aware of how much of a burden we place on the people around us. And we feel shame about that too. I call it the shame of existence. Just existing causes shame. We may be little egos, but we're not stupid egos. We can see that mom is falling on her face. We can see that our brother or sister is all upset because we've come along and we're taking up attention and resources. We know we want to kill the newborn that comes in to the family. We know all this. We're not stupid. We know that dad is coming home in a grumpy mood because he's been at work all day at a job he doesn't want, and that mom may be going out to work as well as working in the home to support me. Some of us get very entitled. We get, well, of course. That's a cover-up for shame. So now that we understand that shame frightens us, it makes us feel like, oh, people are going to get it. They're going to realize that I'm not worth keeping around. Like old people who can't produce anymore are sitting around feeling like useless in nursing homes. Have no sense of value of what they're giving. And they go inward and either get to be those very sweet little old people that you just love to be around, so you want to be around them, or they're cranky old people pretending that they don't know that they're a pain in the ass. That fear that that nobody will want to give us resources anymore is so strong. We're so afraid of that shame that we'll do anything to hide the truth from ourselves. So wow, we've got quite a job to do. We can see why the ego gets in the way of change and self-awareness. We're afraid to look at ourselves. We're afraid to feel shame. We feel shame just because we exist. We have these patterns that were developed out of need in our infancy. That's a lot of resistance. These patterns that we think are our coping mechanisms that may have worked at some time in our family, but don't work anymore. Same thing on a collective level. Okay, rugged individualism. Great. It has its limits. Where I am saying, and I'm not the only one, we have to change all of that. We have to stand up to all of that. And how are we going to do it? It's with our consciousness, with our awareness that this isn't working, and with divine support. So now back to the myth of creation. I believe that just as we were programmed to become discrete entities of differentiated existence with egos, I believe that in us is the program. It's programmed into us to evolve. That we, because we're greater than our egos, we're smarter than our egos, can actually help our egos to transform to what I call the ego twice born. First, the ego is the no, like the 2-year-old or the teenager. It's all about me and it's all about separation. But when the ego is twice born, it says, I think I'd really be better off if everybody in this family were happy. I actually feel and notice that I would get more love from a partner who feels good about him or herself than one who feels ashamed. Wow, what a concept. Why don't I try to help others and build them up? Why don't I try to support the whole? Why don't I put my energies into everybody having more instead of just me? Simple. Challenging. Challenging to the ego as it's known itself. But I'm no longer an infant. The infant can't say, Mom needs to rest and my parents need time for sex. But I can. I have to fight the domination of those old voices and programs. This is not easy, and I can't do it alone. You know why? Because I'm not a unique individual. I am actually part of a collective. I want to do that because I can see that it would be better. Whenever we've had the experience of being in a group of people that's functioning harmoniously, we are happy. The ego goes crazy because the ego says, but what about me? I'm not looking different here. I'm not standing out. But my heart feels happy. My soul is at peace. I want that. I can stand up to my ego and say, you're just a child. This is not the beginning and the end. We can do this with the support of others. And I believe it's programmed into us to be able to do it and to do it now. Because we do have tools for self-awareness. Because we do have programs like Consciousness Boot Camp. Because we do have therapies. Because we do have spiritual programs. Because we have the internet. Because we are facing extinction as a species. Maybe the time has come. Because we have hearts that throb when we see suffering. And we are not selfish by nature. We are deluded by the accident of fate that the way that our universe is constructed is that when we came into existence with ego consciousness. This is our universe. I don't know if there are other universes that look different. I don't really care, because I'm having enough trouble with this universe. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't have to be. If we get it, that we can be differentiated consciousness, but in the context of oneness, that we can remember who we are, which is that we are all one another, that we were once one, that when I see you suffer, that I am suffering too, because I feel your pain, because we are one another. I am inspired. When I began this exposition today about this part, ego, instinct, and evolution, I talked about the fact that the people who are here, who are watching either live or via video later, or are in this room, or aren't even in this room, but are in the ethers with us, that we are here because we know better than to think that we can truly heal ourselves as individuals, because we, in a world of suffering, that we can truly escape suffering as long as anyone suffers. That the same child that goes me, 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 has the capacity for compassion, that we can return to that compassion, that we can care, that we can care because it's part of our nature to care, that we can care because it's our higher intelligence tells us that if we don't care and if we keep going based on me, we are all going to be dying of high cholesterol, high blood pressure, toxic fumes, and general misery because we feel so damned alone in our me universe. But how are we going to move into that we consciousness when our egos say, what makes me valuable is that I am different? I will not get anything from my parents if I am just like my brother and sister. I've got to be different. I've got to separate. I've got to be more than, less than. How do we stand up to that? Well, we can say, but that's not true. That in a well-functioning whole, we can all be well. We have to find within ourselves the courage to become twice born, and we need to help our egos to learn. We need to take the upper hand, and we need to heal the shame of existence, that I no longer have to prove my value by being better than you, by playing all the ego's games. That I am happier, that my lover will love me more if my lover feels well, not if my lover feels shame. And we can build on these experiences one by one and start to develop new patterns, new programs that are guided by our higher consciousness. And we have divine support to do it, because there are incredible, powerful energies on the planet that are helping to sweep away these old programs if we find a way to cooperate with them. We are going to go through some processes where we start overcoming some of these in this next segment. But we have to be willing to take it on. We have to believe that we can do it. If we don't believe we can do it, we won't listen and we won't try. What have we got to lose?
True. Well, misery. Yeah.
Is this ego-based me existence working for us? Do we feel loved, satisfied, fulfilled, happy, well, relaxed? Do we want to live in a world where we have to be afraid of one another because we don't trust each other, because we don't trust each other's egos? Where we know that you are going to be thinking about yourself, and so I have to think about myself because nobody's going to be thinking about us? I don't want to live in that world. I'd rather die trying to co-create the world that I want to live in than be safe in a world that is fundamentally unsafe for everyone. That doesn't work. This whole program, starting with this Living with Reality introduction, is about this transformation. It gives us a way to help the ego to grow up. And the ego will then itself be more happy, more satisfied, be more harmonious, and be in alignment. Because it will begin to identify, not with separation, but with oneness. This is a lot of work, but this is the time. Does anyone feel called to make a commitment to pick that ego up out of its miserable existence where it's always fighting and isolated and scared and alone and overburdened with the responsibility of caring for us, and say you can relax now because you are not alone. We are one and we have divine help, and I am going to help you. Not as an individual, but as a part of a collective that's going to move forward, which is why Consciousness Bootcamp and our other programs are groups. That we as a collective can do what we as individuals cannot. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone. Does anyone feel called?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Would anyone care to stand up and share that? Just come to the microphone, please. Thank you. And those of you who are watching at home, you do this too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on.
You can even say your name if you feel so called.
I'm not hiding. I used to hide. Now I'm up here. Ways I've already changed. I, Christopher Arthur Minor, commit today, September 10th, 2011, to work with my ego and the collective ego as an aspect of consciousness to help and contribute towards its evolution and our evolution. Even though I feel its fear as I'm saying this, I feel a place of comfort in me at the same time. And the comfort and the relaxation is what I want. Not the fear and the anxiety. So I come with humility to you, God, and to all of you, so that we can help each other to this together.
And so do I.
And so do I.
Why?
I'm Christine Benton. And what I really resonated with in the talk is when you had us look at the ego like a 2-year-old. And I think how I've related to the ego is something that has more power than I do, like I have to fight it. And I can see how I've made it bigger than me in that regard. And so when we did that exercise, I could see my ego. I could see myself as a 2-year-old. And just all the things that it came up with, all the strategies to get the attention and try to get my needs met. I definitely could see that I got more than others and developed an acute sense of entitlement that was a bluff for the shame I felt for how much I received and noticed that others didn't. And so I have compassion for my ego as that 2-year-old. And I have the feeling that I can help it, and I'm committed to helping it to feel itself as part of the oneness, that it doesn't have to be in charge. And I have the experience that I have enough support that I don't need my ego to have to take on more than it needs to. So that's my commitment to my ego and to the collective and to myself.
Me too.
Me too.
Me too.
Me too.
Hi, I'm Roz. Like Christine, I was really impacted by looking at ourselves as a 2-year-old. And not just looking at myself from that perspective, but what I really got to see is just how afraid I am of the rest of the world. And being able to see everyone else as that same 2-year-old as well, who's just struggling to try to get their needs met, who's just as afraid as I am, and having a sense of not needing to feel like I'm so powerless in the face of that anymore. And just being able to relax into, wow, they're just like I am. They're just as afraid as I am. And what if neither of us had to be afraid? Like, what could it be like? So that's what I'm committed to. I'm committed to, supporting myself and supporting others, to just be able to not be afraid of each other, and to be able to grow up, and to live in a world where we can actually be relaxed with each other and take this journey on together. And that doesn't seem so frightening. It actually seems enjoyable. It's like, okay, that's cool. I can do that. And I know that I can't do that alone. And it's great to know that there are other people who are beginning to see that for themselves as well. So that's what I'm committed to.
And so am I.
So am I.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. Ditto to what's been said so far, along with another point that really caught my attention was to remember that we have a lot of support. And when I'm in my ego, I totally forget about that. So I commit to everything that's being said, as well as to receive the beneficial energies that are available, and to take it in and to share it.
And so do I.
So do I.
I'm Helen Helix DeSanto, and the thing that really, I've heard it all so many times, but the piece today that really resonated with me, that feels newer, is the concept that we can't engage in shaming anyone or being shamed if we are going to spread love, feel love, support the consciousness of the collective and of ourselves and our unit, whatever that unit is. And that's my commitment, is that I commit to being more aware of my tendency to engage in that and to identify to allow my ego patterns to dominate me in that regard. And I can see it all the way back to childhood, that I had to establish my superiority among the mass of children in order to survive. And that has crept into my other relationships, that I use shame as a way of establishing superiority, and I commit to stopping that today.
And so do I.
I'm Irene Brennan, and the part of your address that really spoke to me was when you said to take the poor beleaguered ego. And I could viscerally experience how I have given that ego such a task, and have insisted that it do it. When there were so many supports available for me to shift my vision from my entanglement with that particular way of dealing with life. And so I really want to commit to releasing my hold on the ego as my source of survival, and relax into the network of support that is so available to me. And thank you all for having taught me that.
And so do I.
And so do I.
Commit to that.
Hi, I'm Chris Reese, and there are two things that really stand out, Beth. One was at the beginning where you were talking about the people here today and the people that are watching, really connecting to that we have a passion to want to help. And you said some people want to help animals, some people want to help plants, and I feel the passion to help people. That's what was ignited in me. And I'm grateful to have a place where I'm learning how to do it. And onto the ego, everything that everyone said resonated with me, and the piece I'd like to add is I'm thinking about both, my ego and helping to embrace what will help my own ego to evolve, and also thinking about our 9-year-old child. I really want to embrace the work of helping to help his ego to evolve now, and I need support to do it. I find myself lapsing into shame sometimes, or detaching or merging, and all the things parents do. And I guess this is my call out to others who want to also be conscious parents, and simultaneously help our own egos to evolve and help the children's. Thank you.
That's a great commitment.
Okay, I'm Ann Brennan, and I was just thinking about when you were talking about the ego and how fear-based we are. I can see how that fear, when the ego takes over, I get into this really separate energy, when I'm afraid, and I'll lash out, and I really hold on to this angry place because it makes me feel powerful in a sad way. But I really want to commit to letting go of that, because I see that it's not a powerful place. It really just leaves me alone and disconnected and without support, which makes me more fearful and makes me repeat the behavior. So I want to commit to overcoming that and supporting other people to do that, and kids as well, because I work with kids.
And so do I.
So do I.
And so do I.
Hi, I'm Annette Hughes. So I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to share right now. There's a lot of information to absorb. I guess the biggest part was about, for me, was 2 words of relaxation and empowerment. And I think that's the part where I really would like to see my ego evolve into supporting a whole and collective and letting go of all those damaging and destructive behaviors that not only impact others but impact myself. And I'd like to see, instead of shaming and everything else everybody else spoke about being able to empower the ones I love and the collective. And that's what I'd like to make my commitment to allow my ego to evolve into a place where I could help others, therefore helping myself in a more authentic way, and to really feel not only the support of the collective, but the love. So I did know what I was going to say.
And so do I.
So do I.
Hi, I'm Rose Evans, and I loved being reminded by you in this talk that we are all up to this, that really it's like part of our design is to support each other and be in the oneness. And I was thinking about how much I've always sort of wanted sometimes for disasters to happen because we all seem to come together so well in those moments. And I thought it was just that people became nicer, kind of. I didn't really put it together, but here's what I see today is that it's an example of being in the oneness. All the playing fields are leveled. Recently we had a power outage in San Diego, and I felt the oneness and witnessed the oneness in others, experiencing the one, like literally experiencing that the playing field had been neutralized, that no matter how much money you had, you still couldn't get the power on. No matter how cute you were, you still couldn't get the power on. So when you came to that stop intersection, that the light wasn't working, you still had to wait your turn, and support others. And people were jumping out and becoming traffic cops, spontaneously, and things like that were happening, and people were buying waters for other people and giving things, and it was a lovely way of hearing what you're saying, that it is a natural expression. Yeah. It is a natural desire to be in this sort of state, even though it's a kind of a disturbing state. Overall, there was that feeling of love and calmness, relaxation showed up, and being together and helping each other. I commit to, every time I see myself fighting for the ego, to remember that I'm much happier, and all around me is much happier when I don't. When I support the ego to survive this evolve through this in a way that's nurturing. I commit to nurturing.
And so do I.
And so do I. Hi, I'm Todd Benton, and I commit to accepting support from everyone. Most of you saw me this morning, and even those of you that heard me, I know I get reactive, and I know it doesn't work, but I know I'm probably going to react as long as I do. And until I do, I commit to accepting your support to help me calm down, to relax when I have those reactive moments, and let the ego relax, because I see now that it's just the ego, thinking that I'm gonna die somehow if the camera doesn't just get set up right, or the chairs aren't in the right place, or someone moves just a little bit in the wrong place. So and so much more. I can echo what almost everyone said. I really love what you said, Anne. Just getting angry and trying to dominate people when I feel that feeling of being weak or feeling like I'm losing control. So I want to apologize to anyone either here in this room or out there to whom I've done that before. And I commit to just taking the correction and continuing to work with it and to grow and heal. So I really can be a blessing to everyone I touch.
Oh, and so do I.
Hi, I'm Bobby Kinner, and I resonated with everything everybody said, and I would today like to commit to receiving support, to really allowing myself to take it in. When I was driving here today, the most incredible thing is my ego and I were having this little conversation, and my ego is telling me that no matter what anybody says, he is the strongest ego in the whole world. None of these other egos are as strong as mine. And I'm in the car, and then when we did that incredible experience this morning, what really resonated with me was that this ego is this 2-year-old all together. It was amazing, and I just relaxed and said, "Oh, my ego isn't going to take me over." Because I really think my ego takes me over a lot. Ego must be very hungry.
Yeah.
It has to eat a lot for lunch. So I again want to commit to receiving support and allowing it in my life.
Oh, and so do I.
So do I.
My name is James Maynard Green, and I commit to overcoming the ego and helping my ego to evolve. As we were doing the exercise of the ego as the 2-year-old, I went back to when I was 2 years old, and I recalled that in my own family, when my brother was born 1 year after me, it developed my ego pattern of I've got to compete, I've got to be better than, and this carried over through the rest of my life. Academically, sports, music, becoming a lawyer, etc., the ultimate competitive arena. You can take it out on the chin or administer it on the chin, etc., while also trying to cultivate other nurturing kinds of awarenesses, hypnotherapy, and so on. But it's been a very amazing kind of transition for me of trying to adjust to being part of a oneness. And so I've been cultivating becoming a oneness in a unit of a couple, and a oneness in a unit with this group, and a oneness in the world, in society. So it's gratifying to see every single day there's opportunities for support from those units, from the people in this group at various times, the support people that I work with on a regular basis, one of whom is my buddy here, Todd. We need support. I'm getting support. This is an amazing transition, because I worked so hard to cultivate the ego. Now I've got to deconstruct it. Reduce it down, tone it down to its right proportion. And I'm very committed to doing that and being in the oneness as much as possible. And so I commit to doing that.
And so do I.
Hi, it's Elizabeth again. I have an addendum that I need to just state out loud. Declare that I stop using shame to knock others down and instead to empower to all those in my life, especially my fiance.
And so do I. We're coming to the close of this section of this module, the teaching section. module, platform 1, 2, 3, and including the next module is going to be about part 1 of Living with Reality, which is about the state of human consciousness, where we are. It covers very different areas from the one that we talked about today. It'll talk about what is reality, why is it hard to live with, how do we deal with our feelings, addictions, and so on. And each module starts with a teaching section where I talk about what's in the book, but try to bring it in maybe in a somewhat different way. And then we're going to be going on and doing another segment in each module where we do some deep healing work as a collective around whatever topics we're working with. Because we all know that we can make as many commitments as we want, but if we don't heal on the inside and if we're not capable of letting go, because we don't get the healing that allows us to let go, we're just going to have another thing to feel ashamed about. Oh, I made a commitment to being different and I wasn't. We don't want that. We have enough shame, don't we? So we have healing processes. In addition to that, we're going to be learning tools and techniques for self-healing and healing one another. Some of that will come up in the healing segment, but in future CBC modules, when we're doing full modules starting out in October 2011, but you can join anytime, we're going to have additional segments where James is going to be giving us training and self-help tools so that we can continue to work on ourselves and also to be able to support one another. And also we encourage you to do Life Force, which, Todd, are we going to be putting Life Force onto the CBC website, or should we just send them to? It's going to be part of the okay. You'll be able to access Life Force at the CBC website if you register. It's a mind, body, spirit exercise program. But in addition to that, it is available to anybody. You can do it free of charge, or you can subscribe at lifeforceworkout.com. Mind, body, spirit exercise program where we align ourselves energetically to emotional healing and bring down that divine energy with spiritual teachings all at the same time. And it takes anywhere between 12 and 15, sometimes 20 minutes. And I really encourage you to do that whether or not you join Consciousness Boot Camp. For those of you who are joining Consciousness Boot Camp, we're requiring that you do Life Force every day whenever possible. There are 5 days, 5 new programs a week, 5 different programs a week. We also are asking you to do the readings. As I said, for this one, it's Ego, Instinct, and Evolution. For you to prepare for your next module, please read part 1 of the book. It's a longer section, but it's about where we are, the state of human consciousness. And in our next module, I'll be teaching from that section, and we'll be doing healing processes from that. And whatever other surprises are going to show up in the Consciousness Bootcamp website. So whether or not you choose to go on and join this program, whether or not you go on to do the training, the deeper training, James and I have just founded the Center for Healing and Higher Consciousness, Psycho-Intuitive Services and Training. We and some other people are doing counseling, coaching to do the deep healing work, again on an individual level. We will be doing a lot of collective healing in this program. We're going to be offering a training to help people to become trained and certified in healing modalities so that you can, if you feel called, to be able to use intuitive processes, which you will see as we do the healing work. You'll see what I'm talking about. That training program will be available through the healing of the Center for Healing and Higher Consciousness, and Consciousness Bootcamp is the first part of that. But if you do not choose to go on in any way, please go on and do this second segment of this module on ego, instinct, and evolution. Join us for the healing and tell other people about it. Let people know that they can come to this site, and this is going to be free for anyone, that they too can make these commitments and get this healing about the ego, which we all need. We need you to spread the word. We are one. We count on one another in order to take on the revolution, which is the inner revolution, and support the ego to be twice born. Thank you for being here with me now. James, would you lead us out in...
I'd like to invite everybody to once again relax. Make yourself comfortable where you are. Just take a deep breath. And just relax the energy flowing through your body as you exhale. And once again, have that inaudible sigh of satisfaction, that ah of satisfaction on the next breath, silently within yourself. You hold within you the fruits of what you've just experienced, what you've just heard and received and absorbed within your being, and whatever level of commitment you have made within yourself on this path of the evolution of yourself, your ego, and assisting others in your world, sharing with others in your world in a greater spirit of oneness, cooperation, and mutual support. And so now, just go ahead and reconnect with your physical body, wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers, stretch. When you're ready, open your eyes, bring your awareness back in the room, feeling fully grounded in your body now.
And as we do this, the ego says, thank you for your compassion, your understanding, and for your support. I am ready to evolve. Just because I kick and scream doesn't mean that I am not ready, as many children do when they need help. They fight it the hardest. But that doesn't mean that in their hearts they don't know that they need it. I cannot go on trying to be the one to protect everyone, to support everyone. I don't have the wisdom. I don't have the tools. I'm not equipped for it, and I'm tired. Don't listen to what I say. Persevere. Thank you. Yes.
Yes.